The latest indicator that the left has gone too far in the woke scolding has been Louis C.K. So Louis C.K., before his downfall, was probably my favorite working comedian. And that is saying that despite the fact that Louis C.K. is a wild leftist who hated Sarah Palin, is vulgar, is vile as a human being, he's really, really funny. If you ever want to watch a great comedy set, go watch Louis C.K. talk about what it is like to raise children who ask too many questions. It's really, really good. Louis C.K. is a very talented comedian. Well, if you recall, last year, Louis C.K. was outed in the middle of the Me Too scandal, in the Me Too movement, for having basically brought back female comedians to his green room and then having pushed them to watch him perform sexual acts upon himself, right? And he went into self-imposed exile and lost tens of millions of dollars and all of the rest. Well, now he's coming back. Well, the woke scolds don't want him to come back. They say that he has sinned. He can never return to public life. I mean, this is the amazing thing about the new woke scolding SJWs, is that there's no such thing as repentance. There's no such thing as redemption. If you sin against them, then you must be cast out into the nether regions forever, unless you are sufficiently wildly leftist, like Kathy Griffin. Then maybe you get to come back. In any case, Louis C.K., who is indeed a wild leftist, was never supposed to come back. But now he is coming back, and he did a comedy set the other night. And in this comedy set, he made some jokes. Now, Louis C.K.'s brand of comedy has always been transgressive. And we were told by the left for years that transgressive comedy was a social good. Like George Carlin, social good. Richard Pryor, social good. Blue comedy, great. Right? All of these violated barriers, violated taboos were good for society because they awakened us to our own excesses and hypocrisies. And well, Louis C.K. comes back and he does a couple of jokes. And he tells a joke about Auschwitz, and then he tells a joke about Parkland survivors, and then he tells a joke about gender fluidity. Here's a little bit of his set. And the left went nuts on him because apparently Louis C.K.'s brand of humor is no longer acceptable in woke scold world.
I love New York for 20 years now. I'd rather be in Auschwitz. Honestly, I would. I mean Auschwitz now, not Auschwitz. Not back then, I mean Auschwitz now. And I was kind of excited to be in my 50s and see people in their 20s and be like, they're crazy. These kids are nuts, but they're not. They're fucking they're just boring. You should address me. They're like royalty. They tell you what to call them. You should address me as they, them. Because I identify as gender neutral. Oh, okay. I don't know. They testify in front of Congress, these kids? What the fuck? What are you doing? You're young. You should be crazy. You should be unhinged. Not in a suit saying, I'm here to tell, fuck you. You're not interesting. Because you went to a high school where kids got shot? Why does that mean I have to listen to you? How does that make you interesting? You didn't get shot. You pushed some fat kid in the way. And then, now I gotta listen to you talking?
Okay, so everybody's going crazy. How dare he make these jokes? Well, because he's a comedian. That's what he does. Are the jokes taboo and transgressive? Yes, but that's his whole shtick. Go back and watch his comedy routine 3-4 years ago. It's probably now 6 to 10 years ago, in which he talks about, where he says, of course, but maybe. It's a great comedy routine where he talks about all these things that we now consider deeply immoral, but maybe they're not, right? He talks about how, of course, we should make sure that kids who have peanut allergies are never exposed to peanuts. But maybe if we just let them all be exposed to peanuts, then peanut allergies will be a thing of the past in one generation, right? He's been doing this sort of transgressive comedy his entire career. The left has decided he must be scolded out of existence. Well, and then they say we have to redefine comedy, where Louis C.K. is no longer funny. But you know who's seriously funny? Samantha Bee. Samantha Bee and Hannah Gadsby. The best kind of comedy is the comedy where you don't laugh ever. See, what we've been doing wrong all these years is defining comedy as funny things, when in reality, the only thing that's funny is that we ever considered comedy funny at one time. The real comedy is you being lectured on why you aren't enough of a woke person to make those kind of jokes. That's real comedy. True comedy is that. Okay? If this is the way that the left wants to promulgate culture, they are going to lose. Okay, this is the real downfall of the left. They can attack President Trump's character as much as they want. But if I have a choice between listening to the dopes who think that Louis C.K. shouldn't be able to make a taboo joke and Donald Trump tweeting like a moron from the White House, this is not a choice for me. This is a very easy choice for me. If that's my only choice, right? If it's just a black, white, one or the other choice, I don't think you should have to choose either. But if you want to choose one or the other, you think I'm going to turn over the country to people who think that Louis C.K. should be forced to tell knock-knock jokes? You think I'm going to turn over the country to a bunch of people who say that Louis C.K.'s jokes now are deeply inappropriate when 10 years ago, the same people were cheering them on when he was like ripping into Sarah Palin and calling her a C word? Sorry, Not going to buy it. You think I'm going to turn over the country to a bunch of people who have to cancel their own marches because they're not intersectional enough? In Northern California, there was a women's march. Okay, and the women's march in Northern California had to be canceled because it was too white. I'm not kidding you. They actually canceled their own women's march because they said there were not enough black people in it. This is according to it's Annie Weinstein of the San Francisco Chronicle. Northern California women's march canceled for being overwhelmingly white. They said the decision came after organizers and supporters of the movement noticed participants over the years had been overwhelmingly white. In lieu of the march, which was originally set to take place on January 19th, organizers will discuss a way to broaden cultural representation going forward, the committee wrote in a statement. Instead of pushing forward with crucial voices absent, the organizing team will take more time for outreach. You think I'm going to turn over the country to a bunch of people who think that you can't do a march if people aren't of the right color? Like, that sounds great to me. And then turn it over to the anti-Semitic women's marchers who won't march unless there are more black people, and the people who think that Louis C.K. is terrible and that Kevin Hart is terrible. They'll come for Bill Burr next. You know they're coming for Bill Burr next, right? They'll come after Joe Rogan. Everybody who you find funny or interesting will eventually be destroyed by the woke skulls, and that's what this year is going to be. And President Trump should only be hoping and praying that if that actually happens, that it will propel him to victory again in 2020. Because the reaction to cultural woke scolding is people in politics saying, you know what, I'm not going to be scolded by these people. I'm just going to vote for whomever is most likely to break things. That's where this is going. The people woke, it's really funny. The people on the left think that Elizabeth Warren running for president is what's going to stop President Trump or Bernie Sanders or Beto O'Rourke. What they don't understand is the thing most likely to propel Trump back to the presidency in 2020 is not a race against any of these people. It's going to be all of the morons on Twitter and all the morons on Facebook and all the idiots in the media who think that Louis C.K. has to be scolded into subservience and obedience for telling jokes about Auschwitz or something.
Clinton, because
that's
Hillary
what's
was a
driving
woman.
people up a wall.
And I asked her why exactly that mattered to her, why that was so important to her. And she really didn't have a great answer, just kept saying it was because she was a woman. I said, well, would you have voted for Sarah Palin if Sarah Palin were running? And of course she said, no, I wouldn't have voted for Sarah Palin if Sarah Palin were running. So I said, it's really not about her being a woman, it's about her being a leftist. And she said, she kind of acknowledged the point, and she said, yeah, but I really want a woman. And this is the problem that everybody in this room faces, is that if you are a person on the left and you see a woman on the right, that means that you are not really women, right? You're all fake women all out here in the audience, right? And we know that because, for example, you don't win track meets while being a biological man, so you're not a real woman. And it's just demonstrative of the fact that for the left, the demonization of conservative women is extraordinarily high. Sarah Palin is not a real woman, so she doesn't fall into that category. Hillary Clinton, however, is a real woman. Like, by the way, Hillary says she's exactly like Wonder Woman, which makes perfect sense if you're crazy. I mean, have you seen the movie? So I, too, would like to see a woman president. I do. And I would like to see it be somebody in this room, somebody with the right principles. In this room are the leaders that the country needs, not just right now, but 10, 15 years in the future when you're actually old enough to run. The people in this room are going to be leading the country, and they should be leading the country, because great female leadership is just great leadership, period. And great female conservative leadership is great conservative leadership, period. So I want to talk about, I guess the theme of today is how to be brave. So I want to talk about 5 things I think that everybody can do, men and women alike, to be brave out there in the political world. So 5 things. The first thing is that you have to be brave enough, and this is something I think we on the right understand. You have to be brave enough to understand that your life is in your own hands. One of the great myths that's handed down to women of all ages across the country by the left is the idea that you are inherently victims of the system. And I see even some conservative women fall for this sort of thing. The idea that the American system is out to screw you somehow, that it's out to get you, that you're victims of a rape culture, that you're victim of a culture that wants to pay you less, that you're victims of a culture that is attempting to keep women back, hold women back, keep women down. This is absolute sheer nonsense. Women have never had it better in the history of humanity than in the United States in 2017. And I think that my wife is a great example of this. She's really able to have everything. She's a doctor, she has 2 kids, and the fact that she's able to live that life in America in 2017 is a testament to the fact that America is such a wonderful place. And that means that when people talk about a glass ceiling, there isn't a glass ceiling except in your own head. Except in the heads of people who put the glass ceiling there. There is no glass ceiling. And it takes a little bit of bravery to acknowledge that your life is in your own hands, that what you do with your life is your responsibility, that it's nobody's fault but your own if you fail in the United States as a general rule. You can do anything. You are capable of doing whatever it is that you want to do. That doesn't mean that everything's going to go your way. It doesn't mean that everybody is going to help you out the way that you would hope that they do. But no one cares enough to stand in your way. And if we're brave enough to acknowledge that freedom comes with responsibility and risk, then we are going to be able to succeed as Americans together. Second point, we always have to be brave enough to tell the truth. And for people who are interested in politics, this, of course, is the hardest thing, because there's always this tension in politics between telling people what they want to hear and telling the truth. Most people want to hear lies. Most people want to hear things that they want to hear all the time. And, I mean, you know this from your relationships. I know this from my marriage. Sometimes you don't want to say things to people you care about because you don't want to hurt their feelings. But in politics, it is imperative that you say things that are true, even if it hurts the feelings of people on your own side. So truth above partisanship. And never has that been more true than right now. Never has that been more true than right now in this moment. Because right now, Republicans, conservatives, Republicans, run the House, they run the Senate, they have the White House. And the temptation is to follow whatever it is that Republicans do and cheer it, no matter what. There's a tribal instinct that takes over in politics that essentially suggests that if the other side hates it, we must be doing something right. There's this weird idea out there that it's okay to lie if it's for your own side. It's okay to fib if it's for your own side. It's okay to cheat if it's for your own side. After all, the other side is doing it. Why would you deprive yourself of those tools? Why would you hamstring yourself? If the other side is willing to do all these terrible things to win, why shouldn't you be willing to do all these terrible things to win? So 2 points here. Number one, I don't think you actually have to do terrible things to win. If I believed that people had to do terrible things to win, I would not be in politics, and I would not believe in a representative democracy. Because